Hey everyone, so it's the beginning of August right now, and the front yard garden has gone through quite a transformation since I last shown it on the blog back in June, I think it was. So I thought it would be fun if I just came out here and gave you all a little tour. So starting in the back here, we have a Fire Glow Japanese maple, and I put this in back in spring. I think it was May. And I just love the rich, dark burgundy color. And in the fall, it's supposed to get bright red, so I'm really looking forward to that. I love Japanese maples, particularly these ones with the, I'm not sure what kind of a leaf you'd call this, like the 5-pointed leaves, the traditional maple shape, I guess you could say, because a lot of Japanese maples have more, I don't know what you would call it, like spikier leaves, and I'm not really into that, so I really like this. And it's the perfect size just to tuck back here right up against the house. It's only supposed to get about 2 to 3 meters tall and wide, so it's just like the perfect little specimen tree to give a lot of impact in the front yard. And then right next to it, I have this show-off starlet forsythia. Obviously, it's not in bloom right now. It only blooms in the spring. But I just thought the bright yellow blooms up against the burgundy of the Japanese maple would just look stunning. So I'm really looking forward to the show come spring. Right behind it here, up against the fence, I have this Improved Blaze climbing rose. This is one of two. I have another one over there, up against the fence along there. That I transplanted back in spring from the backyard. There are a bunch of plants that I had to transplant from the backyard to the front due to some work that we're trying to get done in the back. And they had their first flush of blooms back in June, but they haven't rebloomed, and I'm not really sure why. I'm pretty sure this is a variety that's supposed to bloom all summer long, so not really sure what's happening with that. It could be the fact that I did transplant them. It might be just working on, I don't know, regrowing a good root system. I'm not really sure. And right next to the Japanese maple, I have a couple of Magic Fountain delphiniums that I actually just transplanted from the backyard about a week ago. And I know in conventional gardening wisdom, you're not supposed to do that this deep into the season. Really, you're just supposed to transplant and get new stuff in the ground like in spring and fall. But I don't know, I kind of just feel like if you have time and you want to do something, you should. Doesn't matter what time of the season it is. It just means you just got to baby stuff a little more. You know, watch it really closely, give it more water, maybe some protection if the weather's going to be very harsh. And, you know, if there's a couple of days with overcast skies or rain, that also helps. But, you know, I transplanted a bunch of stuff all throughout the season and they're doing great. So, yeah. Speaking of transplanting, I actually transplanted this huge hydrangea bush from the backyard. I think it was last week, and it seems to be doing fine. So I had to move it because I've had this hydrangea for a few years now, and it just languishes every single summer. It gets super droopy, and sometimes the blooms even get burnt. I think you can see a good example of it right here. Because we just get too much sun in the backyard, and I think this bush in particular, I think it's an endless summer hydrangea. I'm pretty sure. It needs way more shade than I have in the backyard, because our summers are way too hot and sunny. Yeah, and it just, every summer it just gets so droopy no matter how much water I give it. So I thought I should move it out here in the front, and I think it's going to like it a lot better. It's right up against the house, so it'll get a lot of shade. And I love hydrangea bushes. They're actually one of my favorite shrubs to have in the garden. But this one, for some reason, it won't turn blue no matter how much I acidify the soil. I'm not really sure why. It is one of the earliest blooming varieties that I have. So you can kind of see like the pink blooms are already starting to turn green, which is what happens in the fall. It's really pretty. Now right up here in front of the hydrangea, I have some Russian sage. I actually am not sure what variety this is because I just found it randomly at Home Depot and the tag didn't say what variety. And I've never tried growing Russian sage before, but I just love these delicate spires with purple flowers. I think they're so pretty. The pollinators love them. Yeah, I think I'm really excited to add stuff like this to my garden. And right next to that, I have some garden phlox. These are the Red Riding Hood variety. And I got them because I thought they were going to be more of a crimson red, but they look a lot more pink than red to me. I don't know. Still, they're really beautiful. And I've never tried growing phlox before, but I do think that it's a really good staple in a cottage garden, which is kind of the look that I'm trying to go for in the front yard. So I'm really excited to see these get established. And so right next to the phlox, I have an Asiatic lily right here. It has yellow blooms, and obviously it's done blooming for the season. But I moved this from the backyard, I think a couple years ago, because I just really want to fill out the front garden bed with perennials. I think it's essential for a cottage garden, and it's just less work, so I'm slowly trying to get lots of perennials in here. Also in front of the phlox, I have this fruit burst calendula that I grew from seed. There are no blooms blooming currently. These are about to bloom, but it's just a really pretty, I really like the daisy-like blooms that it has, and it's a really pretty peachy color. Next to that, I have these Moody Blues white Veronica. I've never tried growing Veronica before. I actually felt like I didn't really care for Veronica, but then about a month ago, I got this bouquet that had Veronica in it, and then I really saw the potential and kind of changed my mind about it. So I got some Veronica and I put them in here about a month ago. Now over to the left by the stairs, I have a couple of new hydrangeas that I got just this season. One of them is a Bloomstruck, and then one of them is a Let's Dance Rhythmic Blue. I can't remember which is which because I got them at the same time and I planted them at the same time. They used to actually be back there. I originally had them planted back there, but because this is the first season that I have them, they're kind of small and I didn't like the way that looked, so I moved them up here. For some reason, only one of them flowered. This one was the only one that had any blooms. And there's only two. And then this one doesn't have a single bloom at all, so I'm not really sure why that is. Again, maybe it's just because they're newer plants. They're just trying to establish their root system, so I don't really know. And then I did apply so much soil acidifier to try and get the blooms to turn that bluish purplish color that I really like, and no luck on this one. I mean, there's little tinges of blue, so I guess it's possible. Like, I'm just gonna have to keep experimenting with this, I think. So I'm excited to see what will happen with these when they grow up a little. And right next to that, I have a couple of Sarah Bernhardt peonies that were transplanted from the backyard. I originally just kind of placed them wherever in the backyard. I only moved them over here a couple weeks ago. I think one was back there, and then one was back there. I can't really remember. It was just kind of like a placeholder for these, because again, I had to move a bunch of stuff from the backyard to the front. But now I think I might keep them permanently right here besides the stairs, because on the other side of the stairs, there's a really big established Sarah Bernhardt, and I think it would create like a really pretty kind of symmetry to have some Sarah Bernhardt peonies on this side also. Obviously, everything's a little crowded right now just because of all the transplanting and moving around I did this year. So, I mean, things are going to move again So for example, I got a redhead coleus here, and then another coleus that it's very similar to a redhead coleus, but it's not the same. I'm not sure. I can't remember what this one's called. But in the fall, I plan on taking these out of the ground and putting them in pots. So then I'll move this hydrangea over a little bit to give the peonies a little more room. So yeah, it's a never-ending job to keep the garden how you want it. And so right in front of the Sarah Bernhardt's, I do have this little, it's really sad looking little peony here that I put in the ground last fall. And I can't remember if this is the pink Hawaiian coral or the coral charm peony, because I got two. I got one of the pink Hawaiians and one coral charm. So it's either this one or that one. I'm not sure which is which. Can't remember. But I just put them in the ground last fall, so I think it's gonna take a little while for them to get established and really show what they can do. And in front of that, there's some Cat's Pajamas Nepeta. Oh, sorry, this is the Dropmore Nepeta. I put this in the beginning of this season, and I got two. The other one's over there. I can show it to you in just a second, but I'm not sure why this one is so small, because the other one's doing really well. But I think it might be because I've seen a neighborhood cat come by and kind of nibble on it. So, I mean, maybe that's why this one's so small. But, it's working on getting established, and I'm looking forward to how fleshed out it might get next season if the cats stay away. Let me just show you the other one real quick, because you'll see what I mean. So this is the other Dropmore Nepeta that I put in at the beginning of the season, and just look at how huge this is. This was probably just a few inches tall when I got it, and it's really fleshed out. It really loves being over here, and pollinators love it. It gives so much color for so much of the season. It's still blooming now after it's already been a couple of months, and it just won't quit. So I really love Nepeta. I've never used it before, but yeah, it's definitely a showstopper. Now heading back into the garden bed, here in the middle I have a whole big bunch of dianthus that I put in, I think it was last year? Pretty sure it was last year. And it's just all different shades of pink, hot pink, light pink, white and pink, a little bit of red. And in the spring, late spring, early summer, they give such beautiful color. It's just like a mound of 5 different shades of pink. It's so gorgeous. And after the blooms died back, I kind of sheared them all to try and encourage a second flush of blooms. It's worked a little bit, but I mean, yeah, it's looking very tired at this point in the season. And right in front of the dianthus, I put a few Dusty Miller, which I love. I love the color. I love the way the leaves look. I think it's really nice to add different colors and texture of foliage in a garden and not just blooms. It's a shame they're annuals, but they're so easy to come by at the garden center. I mean, you just stick a couple in there every year, and it just gives so much impact. And kind of dotted in between all of the Dusty Miller there, I transplanted a bunch of Gaillardia from the backyard. Again, just because I'm trying to fill out the front with a lot of perennials. And then I got a few new Gaillardia also. One of them is a Arizona Red Shades. It might be that one. One of them is an Orange Halo. One of them is an Arizona Sun. I love Gaillardia. I mean, you're going to see I have a thing for these kind of daisy-like flowers. I think they're really beautiful. And it's just a bonus that they bloom for so long and pollinators love them. And they're really reliable perennials for me. Come back year after year. And then just kind of throughout this whole front section, I kind of put a few marigold that I grew from seed just to kind of fill it in for the year, since I'm still kind of building the bed. And then right here we have a what's it called? A Silver Princess daisy. I think it's called a Silver Princess Daisy. Yeah, a lot of the plants are looking really beat up. You can see all those holes there because we're having, like, for some reason there's a ton of earwigs this year, so they've been kind of munching on a lot of my plants. But what can you do? So moving further to the front, we have a couple of Shockwave Volt Mix petunias that I grew from seed. So in the future, I think I'm gonna refrain from growing petunias from seed. It was a really unrewarding experience, honestly, for me, because the seeds are kind of expensive, and the germination rate I found was very poor. Like, out of a whole seed packet, I got probably maybe 1 or 2 plants, and maybe that's my fault, but petunias are just so plentiful. They're everywhere, in every single garden center, even the grocery store. I just don't really feel like it's worth the time and the effort to grow them from seed when you can just get them so easily anywhere you go, anywhere they have flowers to sell. So in the future, I'm probably not going to grow them from seed anymore, but they are really pretty, and they are filling up the garden bed, And here we have a couple of Lanai Red Verbena. Again, just picking up some annuals that I found pretty to sort of fill up some space this year, since I was working on making the whole garden bed. I really love this red crimson color. It's one of my favorite colors in the garden. So I got a couple of those, one right here, one right there. And then here we have an Oh So Easy Italian Ice Rosebush. This is new this year that I got, a bare root rose, my first time using bare root roses. And one thing I'll say is I don't find that it's growing very fast, but oh, just look at that. That's so pretty. I love it. So I'm not sure if I'll get bare root roses again, because I find this to be very small for one season of growth. I don't know if that's just me, but anyway, it's really pretty, and I can't wait to see it grow up and get big. And then just in front of that, I have a couple of Cat's Pajama Nepeta. These are the Cat's Pajamas, also bare root. I originally had these in the backyard around our bird bath, but then I thought these, again, these spikes of purple would look so pretty with the kind of apricot-y blooms of the Italian ice. And I originally had planted an Atlas rose right here also. So I just thought that kind of apricot-y peachy color with the purple would look so pretty. But then I ended up moving the Atlas rose, so I'll probably move these also. We'll see. Okay, now on the kind of back right side of the garden, we have this huge grouping of Rudbeckia. This was here when we moved in, so one of the only parts of the front yard that I kept, because it's just so beautiful, and obviously the pollinators love it. It just gives such an impact of color later in the season, especially along with this echinacea that was also here when we moved in. And it doesn't get more cottage garden than this, I think. Like, these are two such classic cottage garden flowers. Now, right next to the echinacea, I put a few blue butterfly delphiniums. I grew these from seed, I think, last year, and I had them planted originally in the backyard. I still have a bunch of them out there, but I wanted to move a few just to the front here because I felt like I was lacking a bit of height and also blue colored flowers in the front. So yeah, this is where I just kind of have them tucked in between the echinacea and the fence. And in front of that, I have a couple of Powys Castle Artemisia. It's got that really nice silvery foliage that I think really gives a garden impact. And these are perennial, unlike the Dusty Miller on the other side of the garden. So I'm really looking forward to these coming back bigger and stronger every year to give that statement, an impact to the front yard. Now, right beside the well that I have here in front of the Artemisia, I put a couple of dark storm heucheras. And I can't believe I didn't discover heucheras before this year, but I mean, this is the year that I really found out I love heucheras. I just love how ruffled the foliage is, and they come in so many different beautiful colors. I just love them. And then in front of that, I have a chameleon plant. And then on the other side of the well, I have another one. And again, these are plants that I just put in probably a couple weeks ago, and they're doing just fine. You know, I'm making sure I'm watering them a lot, watching them really closely. But, you know, you can put stuff in your garden whenever you want. And speaking of the well, I have a couple of New Guinea impatiens in there. I originally put a bunch of Calabraca, I think that's how you say it, in there, but then they started petering out, so then I moved these two impatiens from the planter I have by the stairs there, right there, because I think they were getting too much sun over there. They weren't really liking it, so I think that they work a lot better right here because it's so shaded. And then in this little like well bucket, I just put a couple of marigold. On the other side of the well, I have 3 Giga Silver Scabiosa, and I've never had Scabiosa in my garden before. But again, I was just looking for really long blooming, pretty perennials that I could just fill the whole garden with. And when I got these, they were so scraggly. And you can't tell right now because I kind of like sheared them back, hoping that to control them a little better. But they were just flopping all over the place. And I'm pretty sure they're supposed to stand up straighter normally. But here's a bloom just to show you what they look like. But yeah, they were kind of out of control, so I sort of sheared them back recently. And hopefully it'll encourage some newer, straighter growth, but it might be too late in the season. I don't know. And I'm also not really sure this is where I want to keep them. I think because of the weird, like, scraggly habit they had, like, I had a lot of trouble placing them in the garden. Originally, I had them over there somewhere. I can't remember. And then I moved them over here, and I don't think I like it. So I'll probably be moving those at some point. And this is the Atlas rose that I was telling you about that I originally had in the front. I moved it back here because I think eventually it's going to get around 3 or 4 feet tall and wide. So I think it's a better spot for it right here. But it's not in bloom currently. Again, this is one of the bare root roses that I got. So the growth has been very minimal. I think it's really just working on those roots this season. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it does next year. And over here, I have this cute little urn set up with a bunch of creeping phlox. And the idea is sort of for it to have this kind of flower spilling out of a pot kind of effect come spring. I've never had creeping phlox before, so I'm not sure if that's going to work, but I hope it will. I got these in June after they were finished blooming, so I'm not really sure what they're going to look like. Also, I got these 3, this one, and this one, in June, I think, and then I put these 2 in July, and I couldn't remember what the first 3 were in terms of variety. So it is possible that I got 2 different varieties because I couldn't remember what I got, and we're just going to have to wait and see, and we might be surprised in the spring. Now in front of that, I put a few phlox, the shorter garden phlox. There's 2 Kapow pink and then 2 flame purple. Again, I discovered phlox this year, and I think it's a really good staple to have in a perennial garden. So I'll probably be building the phlox collection in here pretty soon. And just in front of that, I have another heuchera. This one is, I think, a ginger peach heuchera. And just look at all these colors. They're so pretty. There's purple undersides, a little bit of green, a little bit of orange. It's just so pretty. And speaking of heucheras, these are 3 melting fire heucheras that I originally had planted right about here. But I don't think they liked that spot. I don't think they were getting enough sun. So I moved them over here a few weeks ago, and I think they're going to do a lot better. As you can see, they're very small, so they really weren't liking where they were. So again, that's another good reason why you might want to, like, don't wait to transplant it. Like, if you think they can handle it, like, just transplant it when you think they need to be transplanted. So just moving over here to the very front of the garden bed, I have this Sonic Bloom Pearl Woodgella. And I think I got this 2 falls ago, so not last fall, but the fall before that. And I had originally put it in the backyard. Again, it was part of the mass transplanting I had to do of stuff from the backyard to the front yard. And I'm not sure if that's why it's not blooming very much, but it had an okay flush of blooms earlier this spring in May, June. But then we had a couple of heat waves and the blooms just kind of fried. And it's only just now starting to rebloom a little bit. But I was under the impression that this was a variety that's supposed to pretty much stay in bloom all summer long. So I'm not really sure what's happening. It could be, again, just the fact that I had to transplant it this spring. It is just working on reestablishing its roots, so it's not setting out blooms. Could be, I don't really know. Right next to that is another transplant. This is an Oh So Easy double red rose. I've had this for several years. You can probably tell by how big it is. And I moved this from the backyard again, and I really should have pruned it. I should have pruned it more when I transplanted it, so then it wouldn't have to support so much growth, because it is really struggling this year. Normally it is just covered with blooms, and like, it has lots of really pretty blooms currently, but normally it has like maybe 3 or 4 times as many blooms. And some of the branches look like they could be dead. I'm not really sure. So I really should have pruned this way back when I transplanted it, so it could recover from the transplant a little easier. But you make mistakes in the garden sometimes, and you live and you learn. So next to that, I have another Sonic Bloom Pearl Woodgella. This one seems to be doing a little better than that other one. Like, there are a few more blooms on it, but I mean, they're not looking great. So yeah, I'm really not sure what's wrong with these Woodgella. I feel like I keep it very well watered, but maybe I'm not. I don't know. It's possible. I guess this side gets a lot more shade, so maybe they need more shade. I don't really know. I thought Woodgella needed full sun, but maybe our sun is too harsh. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just gonna wait and see what happens next year, and I'll try to figure out what's going on with them. So right next to that, I have this Boscobel rose, new this season, and there's a bloom just right here. It hasn't flowered yet, but this is my first David Austin rose, and the blooms are really pretty. I'll try to get some video of the bloom once the bud opens, because they're just so gorgeous. These really full looking, like double bright pink flowers. They're so pretty. I'm probably gonna move it though. I think this spot is too shady for this rose, so I'll probably end up moving it. And right between the Artemisia and the Atlas rose, I have this little spire Russian sage. I had originally put it right there where the blue delphiniums are now. But I thought the purple would just look really pretty up against the kind of orangey peachy color of the Atlas rose. So I moved it over there. I have another one tucked right back here up along the fence. Because again, I just thought the color would provide a really pretty contrast for the red blooms of the climbing rose. And finally, all along the front, I kind of put a row of Campanula mixed with the Grace Ward Lithodora, kind of alternating between the two, except for here at the end, I had another Lithodora, but it kind of died, so I moved one over, so now there's two Campanula right next to each other. But basically, I wanted something that would give a kind of like carpeting effect right at the very front, and I couldn't find exactly what I wanted, so I just ended up getting this stuff because it's what I could find. And I think it looks okay, but I'm not really sure why it's not flowering very much. Here's an example of the Grace Ward. It's got these really small, like little blue flowers, and then the Campanula have this more purpley flower. Yeah, it's not flowering very much, so I'm not really sure what's going on with that. And I really just put these in to have something here this year and just to see how it might work out. So far, it's not really doing what I want, so I mean, we'll just see what happens next year. Maybe I'll take them out and put something else in its place. And that's the August front yard garden tour. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you want more of this type of content, because I don't know about you, but I really enjoy watching garden tours done on video. I think it's the most enjoyable way to consume this type of content. So let me know if you want to see more stuff like this, and I'll see what I can do. Okay, bye.